One of the greatest feelings I've ever had was receiving my first ever paycheck. I mean, think about it. I'd spent the past 20 years in education just to get me to this one moment. But upon receiving that paycheck, I actually ended up creating myself one of my biggest problems. See, I'd learned exactly how to earn the paycheck, but not what to do with it. However, I decided I wanted to resolve this problem and started to research what I should be doing with my money. But upon doing that, I very quickly created myself a second problem. Some guidelines were telling me to invest as much as I could, as fast as I could, whilst others were insisting that I built an emergency fund first. There was so much noise all around me, I didn't know what to believe. Well, in this video, I'm going to solve both of those problems by sharing what I believe is the most optimal order of what to do with your paycheck. This now leads us on to the very first thing to do with your money. Put 1 month worth of expenses into an emergency fund. Yes, there are better places mathematically to be putting your money to start with. However, building that 1 month safety net will prevent you from going into further debt should an emergency arise. And that's why doing this from a psychological perspective is the single most important step you can take with your money. So now, where should you be putting this money? Well, it needs to be in a secure account, somewhere that you can easily access and preferably with as high an interest as possible. Once you've set this up, you can now move on to step 2, which is paying off high interest debt. The average household in the UK has over £82,000 worth of debt, whilst in the US, this rises to over $100,000. Debt is a part of everyone's life, whether it's car payments, mortgages, credit card loans. For me personally, I have over £45,000 of student loans still to repay. Paying off high interest debts is one of the most financially optimal things that you can ever do with your money. Think about it this way. What's the point of trying to get a 10% return in the stock market when you can get a guaranteed 20% return from paying off your credit card with a 20% interest rate? At this point, you should be asking yourself, what is considered high interest debt? For me, high interest is anything above 8%, and let me share with you how I calculated that number. Over the past 30 years, the average return of the stock market has been 8 to 10% per year. If my debt has an interest rate of lower than 8%, I would be better served by putting that extra money into an investment and sticking to minimum payments. If vice versa, the interest rate is higher than 8%, it would be better for me to pay off that debt aggressively rather than putting more money into my investments. Completing those 2 steps now allow you to move on to the next 2, which start to bring about some financial stability. Paying into your employer match. If you're currently employed, you likely have been offered an employer match scheme. This is where whatever you contribute towards your pension here in the UK or your 401k in the US gets doubled by your employer. Of course, they're only going to offer this up to a certain percentage, but the reason why this is so advantageous is there is no other walk of life where you can get an immediate 100% return on your money. Of course, the structure of these payments are going to differ from company to company. For example, when I was at Barclays, what they did was they put a flat 12% into my pension, regardless of if I paid in anything. So there was no employer match scheme per se. So if you're not sure what your scheme is, contact your HR as soon as possible, get them to explain it to you, and if possible, match as much as you can on that scheme. Step 4, increase your emergency fund from 1 month to 3, if not 6 months. This step is extremely difficult to achieve, but once completed, it acts as the backbone of your finances and will reduce a lot of your financial anxiety. To complete this step, the first thing you need to do is calculate exactly how much you're spending every single month. If you're someone with a higher risk appetite, you'll times this number by 3, or if you have a lower risk appetite, you'll times this number by 6 to build your emergency fund amount. As with the 1 month emergency fund, this money needs to be somewhere easily accessible, secure, and with as high an interest rate as possible. Once built, this money is only to be accessed for a worst case scenario. Say, for example, you lost your job. Instead of going into debt, you'll now be able to survive for a set period of time whilst you sort out those problems. Once you finish this step, you can now start thinking about your financial future, starting with your short-term saving goals. A lot of the content that exists online will tell you that investing is your main priority at this point.
Let's say you want to get started with this investing thing.
Probably heard of this term called investing.
I decided to invest $5 every single day.
To invest like the 1%.
However, this fully neglects people that have something in mind they want to do with their money in less than 5 years' time. For example, let's say you need a deposit to purchase a property within the next 3 years, or you want to go on your honeymoon next year. As mentioned earlier, when you invest in the stock market, you can look to get average returns of 8 to 10%, but this is rarely seen over a short-term period, which is why most commentators say that you should only invest money that's going to be in there for over 5 years at the very least. That's why short-term goals are your next priority, and to work out how much you need to put away, you need to do the following steps. First thing is to calculate the total amount that you need to have saved in order to complete that goal. Let's say it's a £50,000 deposit on a property. Step 2 is calculate exactly how many months you have until that money is needed to be accessed. If it's 2 years, that's 24 months. You're then going to take Take that £50,000 saving goal, divide it by 24 months, and that is exactly how much you need to be putting away every single month to hit your goal. You then do have a few options of where you can actually put that money. If it's 1 year or less, an easy access high interest account is probably going to be your best friend. However, if that project is in over a year, if not 2 years, you can start to look at fixed term accounts. Let's say a 1 or 2 year fixed rate, because often these will come with a higher interest rate than an easy access account. If you still have any money left over at the end of the month, or if you don't have any short-term goals, you can then move on to the ultimate wealth building step, which is investing inside of a tax advantaged account. Investing is undoubtedly one of the best long-term approaches to building wealth for your future. But it is vital that if you're going to do this, the first thing you need to open is a tax advantaged account and fill up the allowance given to you by your government. Here in the UK, our tax advantaged account is called a stocks and shares ISA. In the US, it's called a Roth IRA. The benefit of using this account means that any money that you want to withdraw in the future cannot be taxed, even if there are millions of pounds in there. Once I'd filled up that allowance, there are two final things I would consider doing with my money: paying off low interest debt versus a general investment account. Let me start off by saying that putting money into either of these two options is better than just leaving it as cash and having your money devalued by inflation. On the one hand, a general investment account is a great option. Yes, your profits are going to be subject to tax, but you're still going to be growing money towards your financial future. Of course, on the flip side, paying off low interest debt, anything with less than 8%, is also a great option to give yourself an unburdened future. What you choose to do between these two options is of course up to your risk appetite and your personal characteristics. The truth is, these options aren't black and white. For me, I'd actually mix these up a little bit. I'd pay off my short-term low interest first, things like my car finance or a credit card. Then I'd want to start putting more money into my general investment account. And lastly, I'd look at longer-term low interest rate debt, things like a mortgage. But remember, once you're at this step, what's right for you is very rarely going to be what's right for somebody else. Having said all that, I'd love to hear from you. Once you've completed all these steps, what would you choose to do between either investing your money or paying off that low interest debts first? Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if this was useful in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. See ya.